Hello, everybody. I just wanted to share another manuscript that I probably shouldn't have queried um, back in the day. I would call this a story that is on the shelf. There might be some elements that might be salvageable, but all in all, as it stands and as it stood back when I initially wrote it, I probably shouldn't have queried it. However, this was a manuscript that got a little bit of attention on a Twitter pitch party, and I did get a revise and resubmit request from an agent on this story. Ultimately, my revision efforts, while valid and full of good effort, were ultimately futile. So, and I think looking back on what I accomplished, I think the first manuscript was like almost 1,000 words. I think some of my really earliest attempts at picture books were kind of in the almost 1,000 words range, and I started paring them back down to 500. And anyways, this second round, this second attempt, well, I mean, not the second draft. It was probably the 8th or 9th or 10th draft, but I did end up cutting the manuscript in half. So what I'm going to read today is half of what it was, but still ultimately didn't lead to something substantive, and I think I know why. So I'll read the story and give a little bit of analysis on why probably this agent passed and didn't end up interested in it. And however, it does hold a special place in my heart because this is a story that my wife Catherine continually says is her favorite of mine, which I think is really funny. Some of my strengths come out in the dialogue and the characterizations of the characters that are spiders. So I think it's got potential, but it would need a lot of work to get there. So it wasn't queryable, it wasn't ready, and I went too soon, and I kind of botched my shot to revise, and I think I know why. So I want to talk about that. So real quick, here we go. It's a pretty good title. I'll give it that. This is And Then She Ate Dad, a Black Widow Tale by Brian Gerline. Here we go. In the darkest corner of the woodshed behind your house lived a young black widow named Ruby. She was the youngest of 700, the very last to hatch. Her family had just moved to the shed from the stump 10 feet away. "Is something wrong?" asked her mother. "Even though I have 699 sisters and brothers, I feel mostly alone. We're not the only spiders in the shed." "But nobody will like me," Ruby shrieked. "What in the web? Any spider would be happy to know you. What if they find out about Dad?" "Sweetheart, you're the reason we moved. You're the reason he's gone. It's all your fault." "You may not understand now, but you will." Before long, Ruby found herself staring up at a large pair of muddy man boots. Just when she thought she was alone, two strange young black widow spiders popped out from under the boot. "Oh, didn't know this spot was taken. We're just on our way to the roof. I'm Mary and this is Bernard." "It's hard to tell, but I'm finally molting. What's your name?" "I'm Ruby. We're from the stump." "Isn't it magical? Isn't the shed magical?" said Bernard. "I guess. Sorry to bug you, but my mom has lunch wrapped." "Wait, come with us. The roof has the best view," said Mary. "I just don't want to be last again." "Trust me, I understand. Number 411 of 822. Dead middle and starved for attention," said Mary. "I'm one of the only boys in my family, except for Dad. He's all right." "Bernard's so lucky. My dad's gone. Mom ate him, gobbled him up just before we hatched. Lots of single moms in the shed. We make it work." What about you? He's gone. It's okay, Ruby. My mom says that's how we got our name. Not always. My dad is all right. Mom got full after eating his left legs. That's why he's all right. Can't wait till I'm a dad someday. But what if you're eaten? Asked Ruby. Then I'm eaten. But if Mom doesn't eat, there would be no eggs. Dad says we should be glad to sacrifice ourselves. He says love is all about sacrifice. I've never thought about it that way. I thought I was in love once. Turns out it was just her exoskeleton, said Bernard. Enough of all that. Come on, the roof is calling. Lunchtime. That's my mom. How about tomorrow? Same time, same boot, said Bernard. Ruby hurried off and gave her mother a big spider hug, all 8 legs wrapped tight. What was that for? I love you. I guess maybe we wouldn't be around if you didn't eat Dad. Can you tell me the story of how you guys met? And Ruby listened on as her siblings munched. She listened on in their glittering web in the shed behind your house. She listened on and for the first time, somehow, understood. Scene. And that is where the manuscript currently is at and hasn't been looked at or heard in a long time. So there's a couple problems I see just having read it and probably why an agent passed. So just from this quick read, it's got this weird dynamic of heavy dialogue and then no dialogue. And I think the balance and interplay between narration and dialogue needs work. It's kind of like all or nothing. And so I needed to kind of weave those together and mesh them a little bit better so that they're not just so black and white one or the other, because it almost reads like a play and it's almost too much dialogue. That's the first observation. The next one, the theme gets a little preachy. It gets a little too heavy-handed. It's like beating the reader over the head with this. We have this character who feels lonely, but why do we care about her? Who cares if she's alone? We haven't even gotten to know her. It's like I spent no time establishing who this character was before we were supposed to feel sorry for her for moving without a dad. And it's very clear that in the interaction with the other 2 spiders, she's supposed to accept their Black Widow culture of moms eating dads, which I'm not actually 100% correct on, scientifically speaking, with the species. So if this piece were an information fiction or a really poor attempt at information fiction, I need to get my facts right, because not every Black Widow spider eats its mate after the sex act. It's not always like that. So common misconception, I think. So there's a little bit of that going on. And so the whole premise for the story of explaining why Black Widows get their name and having a Black Widow come to terms with that reality is on some shaky ground and is not 100% great and flawed. So if you have an information fiction book, you really have to build it on something that you're confident in with the facts of the situation. So do your research. And I did not enough research to, I think it's an overly simplistic explanation for how Black Widows get their name. And so it doesn't really have that marketability that an editor would want as far as presenting facts that are accurate and enough facts about a Black Widow. It's just one aspect that's more of a common misconception about this species. So it really doesn't hold up. As far as entertainment value, yeah, there's some funny dialogue. Bernard's probably my favorite, and especially the all right joke with the mom eating just the left side of his dad. I think that's pretty fun. But all in all, when you add up all of those, I would call them mistakes or flaws, it renders the piece shaky and fun, but just not really doing it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on And Then She Ate Dad, a Black Widow tale. Probably not going to spend any time working on it anytime soon, but I thought I would share my thoughts on this attempt at information fiction and why some of the story doesn't really work. And I hope that was informative for you in your own writing. What's the balance between dialogue and narration? And if you have information fiction, do the facts hold up? Do you have enough facts? And how are they being presented? Is your theme beating the reader over the head with the point of the story? We don't like that as readers, so we don't want to get too preachy with our point. We also need to take time establishing who our characters are before we care about them. Ruby as a character wasn't really developed before we threw her into a crisis mode, and that made us really not connect with her before we were supposed to care. So entertainment value, potential there, character voice, some nice moments, but overall execution, probably shouldn't have queried it.